Some of the most groundbreaking, even logical-seeming features from aviation history are now completely banned. We're talking about engineering choices that were once seen as the future of flight. Features that engineers push the limits for and that you literally will not see on a new passenger plane today. 25. Square windows. Let's start with one that seems completely harmless. Square windows. In the 1950s, the first commercial jetliner, the de Havilland Comet, had them, and they looked incredible, super sleek, and modern. Here's the terrifying part. At 30,000 feet, the pressure difference makes the plane's body expand just a tiny bit. With a round window, that stress flows smoothly around it. But on a square one, all that force concentrates right at the corners with deadly intensity. This caused catastrophic metal fatigue, and multiple comets literally broke apart in midair, tragically killing everyone on board. After those disasters, square windows were abandoned. The rounded ovals you see today aren't a style choice. They're a non-negotiable standard for safety. 24. Inflatable de-icing boots. Next up, a clever idea with a hidden flaw. Ice building up on wings is incredibly dangerous, so engineers invented pneumatic de-icing boots. These rubber panels on the front edge of the wings inflate with air to crack the ice off. The problem? In really heavy icing, the system just couldn't keep up. Worse, a freak phenomenon called ice bridging could happen, where a solid layer of ice would form over the inflated boot, making it useless. Now, these aren't technically illegal, and you'll still find them on plenty of smaller turboprop planes. But modern regulations for large airliners demand far more robust, usually heated systems. They're a relic you won't find on a new Boeing or Airbus. 23. Open cockpits on airliners. This one seems unbelievable today. Very early passenger planes, like some Ford Trimotor models from the 1920s, had open cockpits. The pilots were out in the wind and freezing cold, while the passengers sat inside an enclosed cabin. This was a holdover from the first days of flight, where every ounce was saved. But as planes flew higher and faster, having pilots endure those conditions became dangerously impractical. Your pilot shouldn't be fighting frostbite while trying to land. The enclosed, pressurized cockpit quickly became a fundamental requirement for obvious reasons. 22. Wicker and lightweight seats. In the dawn of air travel, weight was everything. To save it, early cabins were filled with what we'd call patio furniture today, wicker chairs. They were super light, but here's the terrifying part. In an emergency, they were completely useless. They had zero structural integrity for crash protection and were incredibly flammable. Modern airline seats are engineering marvels, built to withstand insane G-forces and made from fire-retardant materials. Those flimsy wicker chairs, death traps that are rightfully a thing of the past. 21. Onboard smoking and ashtrays. For decades, smoking on a plane was as normal as getting a bag of peanuts. Every single seatback had a built-in ashtray. The problem was the obvious extreme fire hazard of lighting up inside a pressurized tube packed with people, fuel, and flammable materials. In 1973, a Varig flight crash-landed after a fire filled the cabin with smoke, killing 123 people. The fire was suspected to have started from a cigarette thrown in a bathroom waste bin. Today, smoking is universally banned on commercial flights. Those little ashtray signs are just a relic of a riskier era. 20. Taildragger landing gear on airliners. Early airliners like the iconic Douglas DC-3 used a taildragger setup, two big wheels at the front and a small one at the back. It was great for keeping propellers clear of the ground on rough, unpaved fields. But it had a huge flaw. The plane's center of gravity was behind the main wheels, making it inherently unstable on the ground. This led to a nightmare scenario called a ground loop, where the plane could spin out of control during takeoff or landing. The tricycle gear, with a nose wheel at the front, made ground handling dramatically safer and is now the universal standard for airliners. 19. Fabric-covered airliners. A lot of pioneering aircraft were built with a wood or steel frame covered in stretch fabric. It was light, simple, and it worked. But as planes got bigger and needed pressurization for high-altitude flight, fabric was a non-starter. It couldn't hold pressure, it was way less durable than aluminum, and it was dangerously flammable. The move to all-metal construction wasn't just an upgrade, it was a necessary leap for aviation to become the mass transit system we know today. Asbestos insulation. Here's a nightmare. In the mid-20th century, engineers needed a material that was lightweight, fireproof, and a great insulator. They found the perfect answer: asbestos. It was used everywhere in planes, for thermal and acoustic insulation, in brake systems, and around engines. Of course, we now know asbestos is a deadly carcinogen that causes horrific diseases. While it was a miracle material for fireproofing, the long-term health disaster it created for maintenance crews means it's now strictly forbidden and requires intense protocols to remove from older planes. 17. Mid-air aircraft carriers. To solve the problem of protecting long-range bombers, the U.S. Air Force tried something audacious: parasite fighters. A massive bomber, the Convair B-36, would carry a smaller fighter jet inside its bomb bay. The fighter would be lowered on a trapeze, launched to defend the bomber, and then, this is the crazy part, fly back to the trapeze and get caught in midair. The concept was breathtakingly dangerous. Docking was so difficult that it resulted in numerous accidents. The program was just too risky and was ultimately canceled. 16. The nuclear-powered bomber. During the Cold War, the ultimate military dream was a bomber with unlimited range that could stay airborne for weeks. The proposed solution? A nuclear-powered plane. The U.S. poured a fortune into this, even flying a working nuclear reactor inside a B-36 bomber just to test the shielding. The problem was the massive, heavy lead shielding needed to keep the crew from dying of radiation poisoning. The idea of flying a nuclear reactor over populated areas with the catastrophic potential of a crash was ultimately deemed too insane, and the project was scrapped. 15. Passenger escape capsules. When engineers were designing the supersonic Concorde, they faced a terrifying question: how do you bail out at twice the speed of sound? One serious proposal they explored was an individual escape capsule for every passenger. In a catastrophic failure, your seat would become a self-contained, pressurized pod that would be ejected from the plane. The sheer complexity, weight, and the near-zero chance of 100+ people successfully ejecting at once made the idea completely impractical. It was an engineering dead end. 14. Water injection for jet engines. In the early jet age, some engines needed an extra kick for takeoff, and especially on hot days. The solution was water injection. Spraying demineralized water into the engine's combustion chamber cooled the air, made it denser, and allowed more fuel to be burned for a huge temporary thrust boost. But the system added weight and complexity. It was hard on the engines, and the water tanks ran dry fast. It was basically a temporary fix that was quickly made obsolete by more powerful and efficient engines. Flying boat airliners. The Pan Am Clippers of the 1930s represent the golden age of romantic air travel. These were majestic flying boats that could connect continents by sea, which was perfect when long runways were still rare. But their boat-shaped hulls created massive aerodynamic drag, making them slow and horribly inefficient. They were also vulnerable to saltwater corrosion and rough seas. After World War II, as airports were built everywhere, the slower flying boats simply couldn't compete with faster land-based airliners. 12. The Custer Channel Wing. To achieve the dream of taking off from a tiny strip of land, one inventor developed the Channel Wing. It was a bizarre-looking aircraft with two semicircular channels instead of wings, with propellers at the back of them. The props would suck air through the channels at high speed, generating immense lift even when the plane was barely moving. It worked, demonstrating incredible short takeoff and landing ability. But the design suffered from weird control issues, and a single engine failure at low speed was catastrophic. The concept never caught on and remains a weird footnote in aviation history. 11. The Goodyear inflatoplane. This might be one of the strangest ideas that ever actually flew. The inflatoplane was designed for the military as an escape vehicle. It was an entire airplane made of rubberized fabric that could be packed into a crate and dropped behind enemy lines. A downed pilot could inflate it in about 5 minutes and just fly away. They built and flew a dozen of them, but the project was canceled. Turns out the military had no real use for a slow, flimsy plane that could be taken down by a well-aimed rock. 10. Onboard piano lounges. In the 1970s, to get people excited about its new Boeing 747s, American Airlines installed a full piano lounge in the main cabin. It was the peak of jet-age luxury. Passengers could gather around a Wurlitzer electronic piano for a mid-flight sing-along. The problem wasn't safety, it was economics. A piano lounge takes up space that could be filled with more paying customers. As fuel costs went up and competition got fierce, luxury gave way to pure efficiency, and the piano bars quietly disappeared. 9. Explosive bolts for escape. On some high-speed military jets like the XB-70 Valkyrie and the prototype Concorde, ejection hatches were rigged with explosive bolts. In an emergency, the pilot could blow the hatch clean off the fuselage to clear a path for ejection. While necessary for escaping at supersonic speeds, this feature was confined to experimental test aircraft. The risk of an accidental detonation and the sheer force of it made it a non-starter for passenger aviation. It's a style of engineering you only use when the alternative is certain death. 8. Sharply swept forward wings. Engineers figured out that sweeping a wing forward instead of back could offer mind-blowing agility. The experimental Grumman X-29 proved it worked in the 1980s. But there's a deadly aerodynamic flaw called aeroelastic divergence. At high speeds, the airflow can twist a forward-swept wing with so much force that it literally rips it off the plane. The only reason the X-29 could fly was a super advanced computer making constant tiny adjustments to stop it from tearing itself apart. The design is just too inherently unstable and risky for widespread use. 7. Use of magnesium in airframes. In the hunt for lighter and stronger materials, some early designers used magnesium alloys. Magnesium is incredibly light and strong, but it has one terrifying characteristic. It's extremely flammable, and once a magnesium fire starts, it is notoriously difficult to put out. The move to aluminum alloys, which are far more fire-resistant, became the standard. Building a plane out of a material that burns like a giant flare is a design choice that's rightfully been left in the past. 6. Open-air passenger cabins. Even more unbelievable than an open cockpit is an open-air passenger cabin. Some of the very first planes designed to carry multiple people before World War I were basically flying benches with no windows. Passengers were blasted by the wind, needing heavy coats and goggles. The concept was obviously freezing, terrifyingly loud, and completely impractical for anything other than a low, slow, and very short trip. It was abandoned almost as soon as it began. 5. Cable and pulley flight controls. For decades, pilots controlled planes through a web of steel cables and pulleys that physically connected the cockpit stick to the wings and tail. It worked fine on small planes, but on big aircraft, the system was heavy, and it could stretch, snap, or even freeze up in the cold. You'd be pulling the yoke and getting a sluggish response. The development of hydraulic and later computer-controlled fly-by-wire systems provided a far more reliable and powerful way to control a massive airliner. 4. Gun turrets on airliners. This feature was born purely out of necessity. During World War II, some British airliners flying dangerous routes were actually fitted with machine gun turrets for self-defense. These were civilian planes pressed into a quasi-military role. As soon as the war ended, the turrets were immediately removed. The extra weight, drag, and complete lack of any peacetime purpose made them instantly obsolete for passenger travel. 3. Blended wing/lifting body designs. Aircraft like the experimental M2F2 were attempts to create a plane with no real wings, where the entire body generates lift. These lifting bodies are super efficient at high speeds, but are notoriously difficult to control when landing. The 1967 crash of the M2F2, made famous in the opening of The $6 Million Man, highlighted just how dangerous they were at low speed. While the concept is still used in spaceplane design, it remains uncertified and far too risky for passenger aviation. 2. Jet-assisted takeoff, JATO. To get heavy planes off short runways, engineers used a brute force solution: strap rockets to the side of the plane. This system, known as JATO, provided a massive short burst of thrust. It was famously used on the C-130 Hercules transport. However, it was also incredibly loud, dangerous, and a logistical nightmare to handle the disposable rocket canisters. As jet engine performance got dramatically better, the need for strap-on rockets simply disappeared for all but the most extreme military situations. Crew lying prone. In the race for higher speeds, engineers realized that a pilot lying flat on their stomach could handle much higher G-forces and created a smaller, more aerodynamic shape. Several experimental jets were built with the pilot flying the plane with chin rests and weird hand controls. The position was incredibly uncomfortable, gave them a terrible view for landing, and made bailing out in an emergency almost impossible. It was a complete engineering dead end. What other strange aviation experiments do you know about? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.